All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Mike Perich on the show. And Mike is the CEO of Oxbridge Advisors Group. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, a little bit about Mike. He is an extremely experienced CEO that has consistently delivered innovation throughout his career with strong management, operational, technological, and financial skills during 30 years with a privately held international company in highly competitive consumer goods, reporting directly to the international ownership with full P&L and balance sheet responsibility. Mike was deeply involved in sales and marketing activities, building brands to generate growth. He has extensive experience in mergers and acquisitions, buy side and sell side, near and dear to my heart these days, with more than 2 dozen transactions, including international deals. The division consisted of 4 operating companies ranging from manufacturing to distribution, selling in excess of 150,000 articles into more than 20 countries. So, Mike, huge responsibility, extremely impressive resume, um, executive and M&A. Excited to dive in and learn what made you successful as CEO, the things that you did. Before we get to it, though, what's one interesting fact about yourself that maybe not many people know?
The one interesting fact is because I work for an international company, they always like to talk in their mother tongue. So I decided to
Oh,
learn how to speak their mother tongue.
oh,
So I would learn, I couldn't speak it that well, but I could understand the passive languages pretty good. So
uh-huh.
I could figure out when they're talking about me.
Okay. Well, so what does that mean? Like, how many languages did you have to kind of somewhat
Was-
learn?
That was just one Swiss German.
Oh, Swiss chard. Okay, awesome. That it must have been quite an experience. Did you do a lot of, I would imagine, a lot of traveling
I did. I was
internationally?
traveling 50% of the time.
Wow. Wow. For how many years? For all 30 years with them
For
or
about 10 years.
for about 10 years? That's pretty impressive. That's a lot. That's a lot.
You get to know airports quite well.
Yes, you do. Awesome. So, yeah, so take us on a little bit of your journey in the CEO role and t tell us more about, tell us more about your journey.
The journey started, I started out as a CFO. Uh, and I thought as a CFO, your role is really to be more of a strategic partner to the CEO than to be the numbers person.
Mm,
From that, I led a series of acquisitions. Then when there was time to move up, they looked at me and said, you know more than just accounting and finance, so let's move you into the CEO role. So I stepped in that CEO role. It was somewhat of a transition, but the transition wasn't that broad because I knew the markets.
mm,
The biggest learning on that was listening to the market.
mm,
The market speaks volumes. And if you
mm,
don't listen to the market, you're going to miss something important.
mm. Very good. Wow. And so, and we'll come back to, all the stuff about the CEO role. And now you've transitioned here in the last couple of years to you actually advise other CEOs or people in C-suite positions. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was a little tired of the traveling. Even though I loved the job, I thought enough was enough. I had too many airline miles that I couldn't use. So I decided to transition and start my own consulting role. And I help CEOs with a multitude of problems and issues that they have,
Gotcha.
ranging from acquiring something to helping with people.
Okay. And just so in case there's any CEOs out there that might be interested, is there a certain niche or a certain size of a company that you would specialize in helping CEOs?
Usually cap off at the lower middle market. What I've noticed that when you get beyond that, there's usually the bench strength to help out. The lower middle market, they don't have a lot of bench strength. So they
Gotcha.
rely on outside partners and expertise.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome. So let's hop back into some of the stuff that you talked about already. You said listen to your market for product launches and things that are going on. Tell us more about that and how that was critical for you.
Oh, I would travel a lot and I would go visit customers mostly. I want to hear what my customers had to say. Say good, bad, and the ugly. Talk about my companies, talk about my competition, uh, tell me what their customers are interested in, what the trends are.
And what kind of can you give us an example of a time where that, really, paid off for you, somewhere in strategy?
I think in the strategy, I used to do a lot of SWOT analysis. So once a year, not only on my companies, but also on my competition.
Yeah.
And by understanding what the market was and what I'm hearing from my customers, I could help build a pretty strong SWOT analysis and look for strengths and weaknesses, as well as the opportunities.
So you would take the information that talking to your customers, you'd bring that back to a strategic meeting, SWOT analysis with your leadership team, and actually use that for charting out the direction of the company.
Correct. I'm a real big fan of strategy, and that helped build a lot of strategy. Like once you set the right strategy and you execute, you have to be patient, but you also have to be responsive to saying that sometimes the strategy needs to be dynamic, it can't be static, and make
Sure.
adjustments to the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. And I know you mentioned before that one of the keys to your success was surrounding yourself with the right people.
That's
Um,
right. Well, I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do is to let go. And the right way
mm,
to let go is to hire people that are competent and that are strong, that that complement your weaknesses.
mm,
So I like to hire to my weakness. I don't need to hire to my strength.
gotcha. Right. Why you don't need
I don't
a
need
whole bunch of
clones.
mics running
Right.
around. Okay. So, it's one thing everybody, kind of talks about that, getting the right people, getting the right team in place. And I always like to ask specifics and tangibles around that because I find that every CEO has their own kind of flavor or methodology on either finding the right people or once people are in front of them, really determining if they're the right person. So, could you tell us a little bit more about A, how you've been able to find the right people, and then B, once there are people that, candidates that you're evaluating, what are some of your top things that you look for to determine if they're really the right people or not?
I try looking for their EQ.
Okay.
What
All
is their
right.
EQ? I mean, we're all in people businesses. And if you
Yeah.
can't get along with people, you're not going to be a good team player.
So
So I try
how
to,
do you do that? What kind of things do you do? Do you do it during like I've heard some CEOs are like, well, if I'm going to hire a C-suite, one of the first things we're going to do, not first things, but I'm going to take him out to dinner. My wife and the C-suite with his wife, and I want to see how he reacts with like the wait staff and that kind of thing with people that don't have anything to gain from him. So what is what's your kind of thoughts on that or process?
I was just asking them, meeting them several times, not just once.
Yeah,
Uh, Probably would not have not done a dinner. To me, the dinner, how you behave at dinner, I don't want to know if you have good manners or bad manners. My roles that I had didn't require entertaining like that.
yeah, gotcha.
So it would be listening to that and trying to get a read on them. Uh, in the role that I had, you have to be a pretty good judge of character pretty quickly.
Mm,
And that came with over time. It didn't come overnight. And then I would check the references. I like to speak to people that reported to them. I like to speak to people that reported to and some of their peers.
got it.
And if the picture is the same all the way around, you've got someone with a pretty good EQ.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. So one of the main things is EQ, meeting them several times, consistency in behavior, personality. You're checking references and people that report to them,
Right.
and people they report to, and all congruent. And what else is there anything else that is a main thing that you look for besides EQ and complementing your weakness?
Well, obviously, to get into the door, you have to have the skill set. And that goes without saying. You probe a little bit on the skill set to make sure it's there, but generally, by the time they get to you, they've been vetted for skills.
Sure, sure. Somebody else in the company is vetting them. Gotcha. Okay, fantastic. What else do you think has been some of your, keys to success over the years, Mike?
Uh, I think the one is hard work. Everyone has to work hard. Opportunity doesn't happen unless you know where to look for it. And generally, that happens by grinding it out.
Yeah, grinding it out. A CEO grinds it out. You work long hours? Come on now.
Now,
Not at all.
8 to 2, so I could play golf in the afternoon.
That's right. That's right.
That was one question I always asked people: "What's your golf handicap?"
Oh, is that
If they
right?
came back with a low number, I knew they weren't going to make it.
They're spending too much time on the
It's time
on
on the
the
golf
course.
course.
Is it a better answer to say what is a handicap? I'm not sure.
That's the perfect answer.
That's the perfect answer. There you go.
One time I was playing golf with my chairman, and he said, "You're not very good." I said, would you rather have me be good or have me bring in the money?
That's right. Good at golf or good at running the company? Which one do
That's
you
right.
want? Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned too, channel adjacencies, as an area that you focused on in growing your company.
I did. I looked for product adjacencies and I also looked for sales channel adjacencies. Quite often, if you look hard enough, you can see that there might be a parallel path you could take, that you could have whatever product that you're currently making or selling could be sold to different people different ways
Mm,
without much modification.
gotcha. Did you have like, is that something that you just yourself would come up with, or would you kind of assemble a team in the company to look at potential? Again, I'm just trying to, as we do this, put myself and other CEOs who hear that, like, yeah, that's a really good idea. I have this. I never even thought about taking it in other markets. How do I brainstorm it? What did you do to actually kind of brainstorm that or research that
Uh,
concept?
Generally, I would talk to my customers when I go out and travel.
Oh,
I
okay.
talk to them, see what's going on, and just have an epiphany every once in a while. And then when I bring it back to the office, they look at me cross-eyed.
Don't they always? Okay,
Oh,
awesome. Yeah.
one company that I had running for me, they were basically a manufacturer selling to distributors.
Uh-huh.
I decided to have them go online, sell direct to
Oh,
consumers. And
uh-huh.
I did that just before COVID hit, and that pulled them through COVID.
Wow. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Huh.
And something they never would have thought about doing internally.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, as you're going through your journey, Mike, what were you think of some of the things that were the biggest learning opportunities? I sometimes, sometimes people might call it a failure, but what do you think of the things that were the biggest aha moments for you that you learned from in your journey?
I think mistakes for several reasons. One, if you're not making a mistake, you're not stretching,
Hmm.
then you're not trying. So how do you experiment? It's the risk reward analysis. You take a risk and sometimes the risk really works and sometimes it pays
Yeah.
off well,
Yeah.
but you always have to learn from it.
Sure. Sure. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you made that you did learn from?
Uh, some of them were unpleasant ones. For example, I had to shut down an operation and I
Oh.
tried to negotiate with the landlord to offer them something to let me out of the lease, and they didn't want to see eye to eye
Mm, yeah,
and wound up making the lawyers a little bit of money.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
So I learned no more long-term leases.
Ah, okay, fair enough. I know you mentioned before in our pre-call that a couple things that you didn't pull the trigger enough quickly enough on underperforming staff.
That's true. I think we all have that risk. You have someone and you're thinking sometimes someone breathing is better than no one breathing at all.
Right.
And that's a mistake. It's painful. No one likes firing people. And if
No.
they do, they should see a psychologist. But sometimes you have to make that decision. It's not the person that's just there in the wrong place at the wrong spot. They could be more successful elsewhere. And the sooner you come to an understanding with them and with you, you all get to move on to a better place.
How bad did it have to get for you, maybe in the early days versus later? Kind of walk us through, maybe your tenure 6 months in as a CEO dealing with a situation that you dealt with 10 years later as a CEO. What was really the difference in the timing and everything? Kind of walk us through that.
The difference was because I knew how impactful it would be to make the decision quickly.
Hmm.
What it does is bad performers are like an illness
Mm,
that lingers
mm,
and it affects other people. It affects your key performers. Your
yeah,
key performers will look around and go, why is this person that's underperforming still with us?
still here. Yeah,
So respect your key performers as well. And by helping remove poor performers, you also help them because they can go to a place where they would be happier at. No poor performer is happy in the role.
no. Um, did you used to do, for people that was a poor performer, did you do any kind of like a performance improvement plan or something to try to move them from a C to a B player and then kind of let
Yeah,
them
I
decide
thought it
where
was
the chips
always
roll.
fair to do a performance improvement plan.
You
They
do.
need to have a warning. They need to understand.
Sure.
I think it was wrong to come in on a Friday morning, bring them into your conference room and say, you're not coming back this afternoon.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be caught cold. They should have an idea that this isn't working well and have a chance to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, and it's some people just don't have that kind of experience. That's why I like to bring up the tangibles about that. Um,
And it's a tough thing to do because all of a sudden you have a gap. How do you fill the gap?
sure.
You have to strategize how will that gap be filled? Because it could take someone, depending on the role, 3 to 6 months to get up to speed. So there will be a little bit of a encumbrance for a while.
Yeah, where the rest of the team has to fill in, or
Right.
possibly you if it's a C-suite, right? Um, so strategically, over your 10 years, over your tenure as CEO, what do you think were some of the most critical or important strategic moves that you made that kind of pushed the ship or turned the needle for the company?
Finding new sales channels, uh, finding new products. I mean, everyone that buys from you always wants to know what do you have new?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you have to come up constantly reinvent your product line, reinvent your processes and see how you can make something a little different that looks like it's new.
Okay, so maybe it's a very similar product, but you're kind of tweaking it slightly. Uh,
You modify it a little bit so it looks like it's something new and different and it's fresh.
and you go to the same market with that product.
Right. You go to the same market and you introduce it as something fresh and different. For example,
Interesting.
it could be repackaging the exterior of a product
Hmm.
to make it look different.
Just
Adding
repackaging this
repackaging,
exterior.
adding a few features to it that embellish it a little bit, but not a radical overhaul.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah,
For example, with an automobile,
yeah,
you come up with a new car line,
sure.
you maybe add air conditioning as a standard feature.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, it's a different car.
yeah, yeah, totally interesting. Can you give us an example of with your specific company, if you're I would imagine you're allowed to, of how you did that, or maybe going into a new sales channel altogether?
Yeah, we came up with a product that we wanted to gear towards a certain segment of the market.
Yeah.
Uh, we came up with it, we introduced it to one channel, and then mass merchants found it. And we weren't looking for mass merchants, they found us.
Oh, interesting.
And we started to sell through the mass merchants. We changed the products a little bit. We tweaked it, we tweaked the color, we tweaked the form factor, and just added a feature or two and repackaged it and sold it to a mass merchant channel while still staying with an independent channel.
Mm, wow, that's fantastic. Um, so let me ask Mike, if you were going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company or your previous company or current, what's the one book that you'd require he or she read before taking over for you?
There's a series of books by Michael Porter on competitive strategies.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
that's key.
those are that's a lot of it's very deep.
It is
Those
deep.
books I've read them, and it's almost like you have to have a PhD to go through them. Having said that, Michael Porter is the premier on competitive strategy.
Right. I'm a I'm a follower of Michael Porter.
Yeah. I forget the name of the book. There's a gal that kind of wrote a summary of all his main competitive strategy. Do you know the gal and book I'm talking about?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay. It kind of took everything that he does. Because I mean, to understand Michael Porter, as you know, it's almost like requires an engineering degree. But
Right.
but once you get it, there's nothing that competes, right? There's nothing that once you employ that in a company, there's nothing that compete with it, but it's very hard to get to that point. She took his like two or three main books and boiled it down to layman's terms, and that's how I had to, that was my introduction to it. I forget the name of it, but yeah, I'll email it to you.
That'd be
Um,
great.
yeah. So let me just take a few moments, Mike, and kind of summarize some of my key takeaways. Number one is listen to the market. No matter how large of a company you are, $2 million, 25 million, $100 million CEO, um, be willing to get out and talk to your customers. And I believe that you were somewhere in that range, 50 to $100 million company,
Correct.
Mike, as you shared with us. And so you were still getting out there and being very intimate with your customers, and that is extremely important. Even, I was with in my sales days, I was with Ecolab, it was at that time a $23 billion company, and our CEO was actually getting out and meeting, the top customers every year. So listen to your market. Number two is hire the right people. And again, a lot of the guests say that, but I love the things that we dove into in the tangibles here. Is number one, make sure you complement your weaknesses. Don't allow that bias of, the similarity bias that we always hire people that are similar to us, which is a real thing. That's definitely a real thing. So avoid that. Oh, do you want to say
I've
something?
always believed in diversity of thought. I
Diversity
always
of
wanted
thought.
that because
Yeah.
that helps you vet your idea better.
Yeah.
Someone look at it from a different way and say, that's a different color blue than you thought it was.
Yeah.
Well, I want it to be this Pantone blue. They don't know
Right.
it's this Pantone blue. So you develop a better product and a better idea by
Right.
having that diversity of thought.
Last thing you want is a lot of me too's out there.
Correct.
And then emotional quotient. So your EQ, you're looking at um, checking references, how their personality, eagerness for the job, meeting them several times. Of course, they need the skill set to get in the door. And then some of the main strategic things that you've done throughout your journey was sales channel adjacencies, selling to different people, selling to different product or different industries or niches, changing up the product slightly and reselling it. People really like new is basically what I got from you there.
Correct.
Mike, if there was one takeaway that you'd really want the audience to absorb from our time together today, what would that be?
Believe in yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
And the other one is if you're leading, make sure people are following you because you can't be a leader if no one follows you.
Okay. That's a good one. Hey Mike, if anybody, if any of our listeners want to reach out, perhaps there's anybody that might like to get a hold of you for consulting or any questions just from today, what's the best way they could do that?
They could email me anytime at mperich at oag number 2.com.
Great. Awesome. Mike, thanks for being on the show. This was a fantastic episode.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. Appreciate it. I hope
You
all
bet.
your listeners can glean some hope out of this.
Absolutely. And for the listeners out there, please hit the like and subscribe button and help us spread the word about what we're doing. We're helping the next generation of CEOs and leaders be that much more successful. With that, this is your host, Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.